Twilight. This is Pack 365, myself Srija. So today in this session, you are going to learn about the anatomy and physiology of eye and adnexa. So eye is called as the organ of vision. So coming to what is the anatomy of the eye? So let's go through thoroughly into anatomy of the eye. So what is eye? Eye is a paired spherical sensory organ, meaning we have two eyes and they are round structures. So what is their main function? Is vision. So each eye sits inside a protective bony cavity in a skull called as the bony orbit. So the diameter of the typical adult eye is about 24 to 25 millimeters diameter. So what are the layers of the eyeball? So eyeball is made up of three concentric layers, one inside the other, which surround the transparent media, that is cornea, lens, aqueous humor, vitreous humor. So these three layers are fibrous tunic, vascular tunic and nervous tunic. So fibrous tunic, it's the outer coat, whereas vascular tunic, it's a middle coat which is called as uvea. And nervous tunic, it is called as the inner coat which is retina. So let's talk about the fibrous tunic, which is the outer coat. So this is the outermost protective layer. It has two major parts, sclera and cornea. So together they give the eye its shape and strength. So what is sclera? Sclera, it's a white opaque outer covering of the eye. So this forms 5/6, approximately 83% of the total eyeball surface. So what is its structure? It is made up of dense connective tissue which is packed with the collagen fibers. So this collagen fibers, it gives its strength and rigidity to the eyeball. So it becomes transparent anteriorly and it continues to as the cornea at the limbus, which is a circular junction between sclera and cornea. So what are the functions of the sclera? So sclera, it maintains the eyeball shape, which is nothing but the tough collagen keeps the eye rigid like the shell of a ball. So it also helps in attachment site. It acts as an attachment site for extraocular muscles. 6 muscles attached to sclera to move the eyes in different directions like up, down, left, right and rotation. So it also protects the internal structures because it is thick and tough. So it protects delicate structures like the retina and choroid from the injury. So why is the sclera white? You can clearly see in the picture over here, sclera is white in color, right? So why sclera is in white and opaque while the cornea is transparent? Scleral collagen fibers are irregularly arranged, which scatters the light. So they are opaque in color. So corneal collagen fibers, they are regularly arranged with no blood vessels. So they are transparent. So here in this slide, you can clearly see the picture of anatomy of the human eye. So this labels diagram, it shows the important eye structures. Here you can see the cornea, which is a transparent front part. Anterior chamber, it is a space filled with aqueous humor. Iris, which is a colored part. And pupil, it's a central opening of the eye. So lens, these helps to focus the light. And you can also see the vitreous body over the right side. This is a gel filling the eyeball. And retina, which is the layer with photoreceptors. And this is the macula, it is a central vision area. And optic nerve, it carries the impulses from eye to brain. And ciliary body, it produces the aqueous humor and it helps in accommodation. Sclera, which is a white coat, and rectus muscles, these are the muscles which move the eye. So this helps you to easily find where the sclera sits relative to the other structures. So this is about sclera. Now let's go into cornea. So what is cornea? It is one of the most important parts of the eye because it is the first and strongest refracting surface. So what is the cornea? It is a transparent, avascular, highly curved front portion of the fibrous coat of the eye. It covers the iris, pupil, and anterior chamber. So because it doesn't have any blood vessels, this receives oxygen from the air or tear film externally and the aqueous humor internally. So this lack of vessels, which is important because it keeps the cornea very clear. So what is the optical importance of the cornea? So cornea provides similar to 70% of the total refractive power of the eye. So this means it plays a major role in focusing light onto the retina. So the lens only fine-tunes focus but the cornea performs the major bulk of the refraction. So what is the continuity with the sclera? This cornea, it joins the sclera at the cornea-scleral junction. So this is also called as limbus. So this limbus is clinically important because the stem cells for corneal repair are located over here, and surgeons, they use it as a landmark during the procedures. So what are the layers of cornea? How many layers are there? So traditionally there are 5 layers. Newer studies add a 6th layer, which is Dewey's layer. So as of now, 5 layers. First layer is epithelium. So epithelium is the outermost layer. Clearly you can see a picture of cornea here. You can find the layers of the cornea. The first layer is epithelium. It is the outermost layer. It is a fast healing layer, and this acts as a first barrier against the infection, injury, and dehydration. So next to epithelium, you find here is Bowman's membrane or Bowman's layer. So what is Bowman's membrane? It is a strong acellular layer which protects the corneal stroma. It does not generate after the injury. So scars may form over Bowman's layer. So next to Bowman's layer, there is the stroma, which is the 3rd layer. This is the thickest layer, which covers the 90% of the corneal thickness. So this is made up of regularly arranged collagen fibers. So this perfect arrangement is what gives the cornea its transparency. So any swelling or collagen disruption in this stroma part, it gives the loss of clarity. So next to stroma, you will find the Descemet's membrane. So this Descemet's membrane, this is thin, but it is a very strong basement membrane. It regenerates easily, and it also protects the endothelium. So endothelium, it is the innermost single cell layer. It maintains the corneal transparency by pumping excess fluid out of the stroma. So this endothelium, it does not regenerate, so that the damage can lead to corneal edema, nothing but clouding. So the 6th layer is Dewey's layer. It is a newly described one which is present in between stroma and Descemet's membrane. So what does this Dewey's layer do? It helps to maintain the structural integrity, and it is also important during the corneal surgery. So these are the layers of the cornea. So what are the functions of the cornea? Main refracting surface. So it acts as a main refracting surface, like how it provides 70% of the eye's focusing ability. So because of its curvature and clarity. So it helps in allowing the passage of light, like it acts as a transparent structure which allows light to enter the eye without scattering. So it also acts as a protective barrier in which the epithelium protects against the dust, microbes, and chemicals. So it blink, reflex, and tear film work with the cornea to maintain the protection. So why is the cornea transparent? Because absence of blood vessels due to regular collagen arrangement, and also because of the controlled hydration. So this is about the cornea. So cornea is a clear avascular curved front part of the eye which is responsible for the most of the eye's refractive power. Its 5 to 6 layers work together to maintain clarity, shape, and protection. So damage to deeper layers, what happens? Especially the endothelium, it can severely affect the vision. So next, coming to vascular tunic, which is the middle coat, is also called as ovea. So ovea, it is a middle vascular layer of the eye. So this consists of 3 parts again: choroid, ciliary body, and iris. So this layer is highly vascular and it plays a major role in nutrition, like light control and also the aqueous humor production. So coming to choroid layer. So what is the choroid layer? It is a highly vascular pigmented layer which is located between the sclera outside and the retina inside. So this is rich in blood vessels and also the brown melanin pigment. So what are the functions of the choroid? It supplies the oxygen and nutrients to the outer retina. So especially the photoreceptor layer, which consists of rods and cones, which has a very high metabolic demand, they supply the oxygen. So it also absorbs the stray light, like the melanin pigment, which prevents the light from the reflecting inside the eye. So this improves the visual clarity and also it reduces the glare. So this choroid layer, it also maintains the eye temperature by regulating the blood flow. So how many layers are there in the choroid? So what are the layers of the choroid? From outer to inner. So suprachoroidal lamina, vessel layer, choriocapillaris, and brooch membrane. You can clearly see the layers of the choroid at the right side in this picture. So suprachoroidal layer over here. So this is a thin loose connective tissue between the sclera and choroid. So it allows the blood vessels and nerves to pass through. Next to suprachoroidal layer, you will find the vessel layer, which is also called as Haller's layer. So what is Haller's layer? It contains the large caliber vessels. So this supplies the deeper choroid and sclera. It has shown as the Haller's label in the diagram. You can clearly see this. So next to Haller's, you can find the medium vessel layer, which is also called as Sattler's layer. So this contains medium-sized arterioles and venules. So what does it do? This brings blood closer to the retina. So next to Sattler's layer, choriocapillaries. So choriocapillaries, it is very dense network of tiny capillaries. It provides nutrients directly to the retinal pigment epithelium and also the photoreceptors. So this choriocapillaries, it is essential for the photoreceptor survival. So the last layer of the choroid is Bruch membrane. So what is Bruch membrane? It is a thin multi-layered membrane between choroid and retinal pigment epithelium. So this maintains the exchange of nutrients and waste between choroid and retina. So this membrane, it is important in diseases such as age-related macular degeneration, nothing but you call it as AMD. So in this diagram, you can clearly see sclera is the outermost, suprachoroid, Haller's layer, large vessels, Sattler's layer, medium vessels, choriocapillaries, tiny capillaries, Bruch membrane, and pigment epithelium, which is the first layer of the retina. So this layering helps to visualize the transition from large vessels to small vessels to retinal surface. So next is ciliary body. So what is ciliary body? This is located behind the iris. So this is triangular in cross section. What does it do? It performs three major functions. So which are, it produces the aqueous humor. It contains the ciliary muscle for accommodation, nothing but changing the lens shape for near or far vision. It also anchors the lens via jonular fibers. So why is this choroid layer is so important? The retina, especially photoreceptors, they consumes more oxygen than any other tissue in the body. So the choroid's high blood flow, they ensures the constant supply and heat regulation. So why does choroid have pigment? To absorb light and prevent the internal reflection, which is helping to create the sharp images. So what are the parts of the ciliary body? The ciliary body is the part of the uvea and it lies behind the iris, forming a ring around the lens. So this part of the ciliary body, it has two main parts. One is ciliary muscle and the other is ciliary processes. So what is ciliary muscle? It is a smooth muscle which is arranged in both circular fibers and as well as longitudinal fibers, sometimes also described as the oblique fibers. So what does these fibers do? These fibers changes the shape of the lens to focus on near objects, which is known as accommodation. So how ciliary muscles work? So for near vision, it works like the ciliary muscle contracts, the zonular fibers relax, so the lens becomes more convex. So the power increases and the near objects are clear. In the case of far vision, ciliary muscle relaxes, jonular fibers tighten and the lens flattens so that the distant objects are clear. So this mechanism is controlled by the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is about the ciliary muscle. So next coming to ciliary process. So about 70 to 80 tiny folds arranged like a crown. So they produce the aqueous humor, the clear fluid that fills both the anterior chamber between cornea and iris and also the posterior chamber between iris and lens. So what are the functions of aqueous humor? So this maintains the intraocular pressure. It also nourishes the cornea and lens because both are avascular. It also removes the metabolic waste. So what are the functions of the ciliary body? Accommodation, aqueous humor secretion, and also intraocular pressure maintenance. So what is accommodation? Nothing but it controls the lens focusing especially for the near vision. What is aqueous humor secretion? It is vital for maintaining correct pressure and nutrition. And IOP maintenance nothing but intraocular pressure. So this helps in proper balance of aqueous humor production and also drainage prevents the glaucoma. So next to ciliary body, you will find the iris. So what is iris? What are the functions of iris? So iris is the colored part of the eye. So the right side, you can clearly see the picture of structure of iris. So here you can see the middle part. It is the colored part of the eye, which is brown, blue, hazel, etc. So this iris, it is a pigmented circular structure with a central opening called the pupil. So what are the functions of the pupil? It acts like a camera aperture, controlling the amount of light entering the eye. So when there is a more light, the iris get constricted. So when there is a less light, the iris get dilated. So how iris is divided into anterior segment into two chambers. So iris divides the anterior segment into both anterior chamber and posterior chamber. So this anterior chamber, it is present in between cornea and iris, whereas posterior chamber, it is present between iris and lens. So these two chambers are connected to the pupil and filled with the aqueous humor. So what are the important muscles for iris? Sphincter pupillae and dilator pupillae. So what is sphincter pupillae? These are the circular muscles which are present around the pupil. So what is the function of sphincter pupillae? It constricts the pupil. So it is controlled by the parasympathetic nervous system. Whereas dilator pupillae, it is a radial muscle fiber. What is the function? It dilates the pupil. So this is controlled by sympathetic nervous system. So sphincter is a small pupil, whereas dilator is a dilated pupil. So here in the picture, collarate, you can find the collarate, which is the thickest region, and radial furrows, these are the natural furrows which are helping in the iris movement. So pupil is a central opening. Ciliary zone, it is a peripheral iris towards the ciliary body. So crypts are the holes that allow the aqueous fluid movement. So these features, they helps the iris change the shape smoothly. So why do eyes have different colors? Due to varying amounts of melanin in the iris stroma, if there is more melanin, it leads to brown eyes. If there is less melanin, it leads to blue or green eyes. So why is the ciliary body important in glaucoma? It produces the aqueous humor due to overproduction or blocked drainage, and some treatments aim to reduce the aqueous humor production. So this is about the ciliary body and iris. So coming to the nervous tunic, it is the inner layer or also called as retina. So what is the retina? It is the innermost layer of the eye. So it is responsible for receiving the light, converting it into electrical impulses, and also sending these signals to the brain via the optical nerve. So this makes it a neurosensory tissue. So retina, it consists of two major layers: retinal pigment epithelium, which is also derived as RPE. So this retinal pigment epithelium, it is the outermost layer of the retina, and it lies just above the choroid layer. So it consists of a single layer of pigmented cells, which is also called as melanin containing cells. So why is melanin important here? Because melanin absorbs the scattered light, right? So it prevents the light from bouncing around inside the eye. So this gives the eye a clear and sharper vision. So what are the functions of the retinal pigment epithelium? So it absorbs the scattered light, nothing but it acts like a light trap to improve the visual acuity. It also prevents the blurry or distorted images. The second function is it provides nutrients to photoreceptors. Here photoreceptors include both rods and cones, which are showed in this picture. So photoreceptors, they do not have their own blood supply. So they rely on the retinal pigment epithelium for both glucose and oxygen, and sometimes about the essential ions and metabolic support. So next function is phagocytosis of photoreceptor debris. So rods and cones, they continuously shed their outer segment disc, which is the part that captures the light. So this retinal pigment epithelium, they clean up these shed discs through the phagocytosis like a cellular garbage disposal. So without this process, the vision would deteriorate over the time. So in this picture, a pigmented layer which represents the retinal pigment epithelium, which is shown as a dark layer at the bottom. So there are two types of photoreceptors seen here, rods and cones. So rods which are responsible for the night vision, whereas cones which are responsible for the color vision. So this shows the synaptic connections and the neural circuitry that transmits the visual signals to the brain. So next about the neural retina. So neural retina, it consists of 10 layers, so which includes both the photoreceptors, bipolar cells, ganglion cells and nerve fiber layers. So here, what are the retinal layers? The first layer is pigment epithelium in the picture. Second is photoreceptor layer. The third one is outer limiting membrane. Fourth layer is outer nuclear layer. Fifth layer is outer plexiform layer. Sixth is inner nuclear layer. Seventh is inner plexiform layer. Eighth is ganglion cell layer. And ninth is nerve fiber layer. So what are the components of this neural retina? Axons at the surface of retina passing via the optical nerve and tracked to the lateral geniculate body. Here you can see the ganglion cell, Muller cell, bipolar cell, amacrine cell, horizontal cell, and these are the rods and cones. These are the pigment cells, and the bottom layer is the choroid layer. So this is about the neural retina and the specialized regions. So next, coming to the optic nerve. So what is optic nerve? It is the second cranial nerve and it is a crucial part of the visual system. So what is optical nerve? It is made up of the axons of retinal ganglion cells. So these axons, they collect at the back of the eye and they form the optic nerve. So this optic nerve, it carries the visual information, nothing but it carries the electrical impulses from the retina to the brain, specifically to the occipital lobe where vision is processed. So why this optic nerve is important? Because it does not regenerate, which is why the injuries causes the permanent vision loss. So next is crystalline lens. So what are lens? So this lens is a transparent biconvex avascular structure having no blood vessels located behind the iris. So these are suspended by the suspensory ligaments. So these fibers, they attach the lens to the ciliary body. So what are the functions of the lens? Fine focusing of the light. That is, it helps to focus the light precisely on the retina for a clear image. And also it functions in the accommodation. Means the lens changes its shape to focus on objects at different distances. Like in the case of near objects, the lens becomes thicker. In the case of far objects, the lens becomes thinner. So this allows us to switch focus between near and far vision smoothly. So next part is the humors of the eye. So what are the humors of the eye? Aqueous humor and vitreous humor. So aqueous humor, it is a clear watery fluid that fills the anterior chamber and posterior chamber. So this is produced by ciliary process of the ciliary body. So what are the functions of the aqueous humor? It maintains the intraocular pressure. It provides the nutrients to avascular structures like both cornea and lens. It also removes the metabolic waste. And here, this picture shows you the visual pathway of the eye. So how the visual information travels from eye to the brain. So what is the first step? The light enters into each eye. So each eye receives images from both right visual fluid and left visual fluid. And then optic nerve, the visual signals move from each retina to the left and right optic nerves. And then optic chiasma, this is where the nasal fibers cross and temporal fibers do not. So why crossing happens over here? It allows both sides of the brain to receive information from both the eyes, essential for the depth perception and also the binocular vision. So then optic tracts. So after crossing the optic chiasma, the pathways are called as optic tracts. So left optic tract, here it carries information from the right visual fluid, whereas the right optic tract, it carries information from the left visual field. So next, after optic tract, it is occipital lobe. So this is the primary visual cortex. So both the optic tracts send signals to the occipital lobe where the brain forms the final visual image. So this is the visual pathway that is sending off the information from brain to eye. So next, how important is the aqueous humor? So aqueous humor, it is a clearly fluid produced by the ciliary processes in the posterior chamber. So what is the flow sequence? Here, posterior chamber, next pupil, next anterior chamber, trabecular meshwork and Skene's canal. So let's break it down. So what is posterior chamber? The aqueous humor, it is produced here by the ciliary processes, whereas in pupil, the fluid flows through the pupil, which is the opening in the iris, And anterior chamber, it fills the space between cornea and iris, which maintains the intraocular pressure, and next by trabecular meshwork. So this is a sieve-like drainage network located at the corner where the cornea meets iris. So this is called as iridocorneal angle. Then Schlemm's canal. So this is a circular drainage channel that collects the aqueous humor and sends it to the venous circulation. So why this is important? Because any blockage in the trabecular meshwork or Schlemm's canal, it leads to increased intraocular pressure, which results in glaucoma. So this is about the aqueous humor. So next, coming to vitreous humor, which is also called as posterior segment. So this vitreous humor, it is completely different from the aqueous humor. So what are the characteristics of the vitreous humor? It is completely different from the aqueous humor. It is a gel-like material. It fills the vitreous chamber, which is the largest space in the eyeball. So what are the functions of the vitreous humor? It maintains the eyeball shape. Like it supports the spherical structure of the eye. It prevents the collapse of the globe. And also it helps in supporting the retina. It holds the retina flat against the choroid. It helps to maintain the proper distance between lens and retina for the clear focus. It also acts as a shock absorber. Like it protects the delicate retinal layers from the sudden eye movements. So here there is a picture showing you the anterior chamber and the vitreous chamber. So vitreous chamber or vitreous humor, this is a large blue area behind the lens. And the anterior chamber or aqueous humor, this is a light colored area in the front of the iris and cornea. So cornea is a transparent outermost layer which helps to focus light. Biconvex outer transparent structure which focuses light sharply is the lens. Next, iris. Iris is a pigmented structure that controls the pupil size, and retina. At the bottom, you can find the retina, which is a light sensitive layer forming the images, and choroid layer, it is a vascular layer that nourishes the retina. Fovea, which is a central vision area with highest visual acuity, and optical nerve, it carries the signals from eye to brain. So this is about the anatomy of the eye. So this is for today's session. I hope this session has helped you. So in the next session, you will be learning about the anatomy of adnexa and also the physiology of eye and accessory structures. Thank you.